I was lying on the operating table, and the chief surgeon was my ex-girlfriend. She looked at me there and suddenly gasped and laughed. What the hell is that tattoo on you? You, and Sweet. I was suffering from abdominal pain at this time, still trying to squeeze out a smile. You do not recognize? Sweet is the cat she and I used to keep together, a beautiful ragdoll with a character as high and cold as the hostess. The anesthesiologist next to me peeked at it, couldn't hold back, and laughed out loud. Too abstract, did not recognize. Shayla, long eyebrows locked, through the gloves, her fingers in my abs traced a little. Tattooed in this part, you can now tolerate? The cold touch made me cringe. I barely resisted grabbing her hand. But reason made me try to keep my composure. Doctor, can you sew me up pretty later? I just took on a couple of shoots for a men's underwear brand last month. Depending on the surgery. Shayla said faintly. She rushed to the anesthesiologist lady who was halfway through eating her melon and said, let's start. To be honest, I am very nervous. Not because it's the first time I've been on the operating table since I grew up, but I didn't expect to be reunited with Shayla in this form. I tried to take a deep breath. Mago. Shayla suddenly called my name and I was caught off guard by her clear eyes. She lowered her voice and whispered in my ear, why did you break up with me before if you had me tattooed on your body? I had a moment of incomprehension. Is not the breakup is not she mentioned? Because of the gap that existed between me and her. Shayla, she is always overly self-disciplined and restrained, while I have a wide range of interests. Before I met her, I drank and exhibited for work and flew all over the country. She graduated with a doctorate from a medical university, and I graduated with an art degree, barely an 18th tier model. In my friend's words, I had a good skin.
Nowadays, successful women are all intellectuals, and those like me, who are in the entertainment industry, can only be a pastime. Because of my work, the people I come into contact with are more jumpy. Over time, I would make a few jokes in front of Shayla, but Shayla didn't like it. Not only did she not get the joke, she probably thought it was vulgar. So we eventually broke up. I mentioned, Shayla, her self-esteem is greater than everything, did not ask the reason before pulling me black. It still hurts to think about it. But soon, I became numb. The anesthesiologist slowly pushed something into my vein, and in front of me Shayla stayed in a hunched position, very close to me. Under her gaze, my consciousness grew fuzzy. In a trance, I seemed to hear Shayla's voice again. She said, I'll stay with you.
The anesthesia had just woken me up, my mind was not clear, and I kept stirring the covers in the heat. Someone took the trouble to cover me over and over again, and when I tried to pull on my scrubs, a warm hand gently held mine. I mumbled deliriously, Silene, turn down the air conditioning, I'm hot. A cold voice rang out, who is Silene? Our company's first sister, more handsome than me. Your new girlfriend? Well, we had a party together, drank and ate late night snacks together, and did sports. Mago, you can be really good, so this is the reason for your acute appendicitis attack. Halfway through my confused reply, I recognized the woman in front of me, dressed in a white coat and cool from head to toe, as Shayla. She admired my panicked expression for a few seconds and pushed me, along with the hospital bed, to the nurse. The tone of her voice was cold as hell, especially when she said the word girlfriend. The patient in bed 07 woke up from anesthesia and was pushed out to his girlfriend. It turns out that the door that is your girlfriend, my colleagues just almost want to go to WeChat it. Dude, you have unique tastes, yo. The nurse smiled at me and pushed me out. I was still thinking, where did I get a girlfriend? The operating room door just opened, and I heard Silene's shocking bang. It's my fault for staying up in the middle of the night and dragging you to jerk off for exercise. My coworker Silene, a 5 feet 9 inches bright northeastern girl with a popular wolf head, came striding towards me. Green handsome hard features make the girls in the corridor have side eye. But as soon as she walked to my bedside, her emotions couldn't be strained. Crying snot and tears, attracting people in the family room have probed their heads. Poor young, what kind of problem how to do an exercise in the middle of the night, people no longer. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do that. Look at this guy tall and big. I noise horse said, don't cry, other people again you as a young man. I don't have this fetish. Silene wiped her tears and gave me a hand on the arm. You're on the operating table, what's wrong with you? Are you still a man? I wrinkled my eyebrows. I'm not a man, are you? If I were a man, you would not be able to defeat me, Silene scorned. The young couple is really good. The little nurse who passed by couldn't help but snort out a laugh. Then I saw a figure pass by us, Shayla. Silene stared at her back for a while and frowned. I didn't see it wrong. Just now that beautiful doctor is not your cell phone screensaver that? The ex-girlfriend you've been trying to get back? I sighed, that's her. This is definitely not going to work, she took you as my girlfriend. Silene was stunned, then got up and shouted at the end of the corridor, sister-in-law, don't misunderstand. I was just talking about the dry fight of dry. Don't shout. She turned left into the elevator and left. Your kid wants an ambulance to pull you to this hospital. Isn't the price of your chance encounter a bit high? Silene narrowed his eyes meaningfully and teased, luckily she's not a burns or orthopedic surgeon. What's wrong with burns and orthopedics? Silene moved his wrist, that must not find someone to break your legs. After the surgery, Silene at my bedside eating just ordered fried chicken takeout. As she said, Silene, give me a bite. Shayla was standing at the end of my bed at some point, and she swept her cold eyes towards Silene. Silene immediately moved the chicken leg in her hand away from my mouth and threw it back into the box. Shayla let her hair down. Her long, silky hair added a touch of gentleness to her demeanor, and Silene was dumbfounded for a moment. When she reacted, she hurriedly got up and moved a stool for Shayla. Dr. Jiang, are you tired of checking the room? Come on, sit down for a while. I have an itchy throat and coughed. Mago, I'll go to the nurse's desk to order food for you. Silene immediately smiled very kindly at me, as if she was my old mother, which made me very uncomfortable. Shayla said, no, he can't eat all day today. Oh, then Silene looked at me with difficulty and I knew she was trying to create a chance for Shayla and I to be alone. I gave Silene a wink. Go get me an escort for tonight. Before she could finish her sentence, Shayla interrupted. She said, Bed 07, I'm going to check your incision now. Then I'll leave you alone. Doctor, you can check it for longer. Silene said and pulled the curtain around my hospital bed tightly. Shayla and I were surrounded inside. We were surrounded by Shayla and I, staring at each other with our eyes wide open. The atmosphere was a little awkward for a while. Shayla took her job seriously and really examined me carefully. She recovered the gauze very, very gently, and I couldn't help but raise the corners of my lips as I watched her face caught in the light. What's to smile about? She whisked the corners of the covers for me and dabbed me with another swab as I pursed my lips and reached up to tug at the corner of her shirt. Shayla looked down at my hand and frowned. Something to say? I said in a warm voice, can you come closer? I've just come out of surgery and I don't have enough air in my lungs, so I'll keep my voice down. I'm at work. Shayla didn't budge. Shayla, doctor, I took her sleeve and shook it gently like I used to do. Shayla looked up and took a few deep breaths, then suddenly bent down obediently, propped one hand on my pillow, and I was almost on the verge of touching her lips. Mago, you know what you look like right now? She hooked a slightly mocking sneer as she spoke. Even though she's still as icy as ever, there's a light in the bottom of her eyes as she looks at me right now. I didn't dare to let go. I was afraid that if I let go again this time, she would really disappear. Like what? I opened my mouth, my voice was mute. She said, like a dog wagging its tail. I looked at her opening and closing lips and swallowed involuntarily. I inclined my head and released her, offended, seeing the knot of her throat where her eyes landed on my collar. The next second, the familiar scent of jasmine. Shayla surprised me by lowering her head and kissing me on the lips. I couldn't help but freeze. The sun had come out of the west, Shayla, and she actually took the initiative to kiss me? Dry lips were gently traced by her, and in the dimly lit private space, each other's breathing was a bit rapid. Little old me, tonight the escort may. A head suddenly pokes in from behind the curtain, and Shayla pushes me away at that moment. Silene was stunned in place, wide-eyed with me. Shayla glanced lightly at Silene behind her and gently wiped her lips with her fingertips. Don't touch water to your cut lately. She dropped a sentence and was about to leave when Silene suddenly reached out and pulled her back. Shayla gathered her steps and indifferently drew back her hand almost simultaneously. They both spoke at the same time. I stayed. Kissed. I? Silene stepped forward and shoved a pack of cigarettes into Shayla's hand and said, Doctor, please help. The nurse on duty at the nurse's desk said that the orderlies are all booked up tonight. I'm not sure what to do about this, Shayla said. Doctor, please help me. Shayla expressionlessly glanced at Silene's paw that kept slapping his hand and frowned. I don't smoke, you girls smoke less. Okay, no problem. But barring that, I'm not quite the same as the average girl. How can I explain this to a straight girl like you? Silene actually blushed and stammered when she met Shayla's gaze, and the more she spoke, the more she whispered, before finally pulling the cigarettes out of Shayla's hand and slipping them back into her pocket. Shayla ignores Silene, I'll take care of the caretaker. Shayla, that's great. I'll spill when the caregiver gets here. I almost rushed out of the bed to stop them, but Shayla dodged her own way, her tone unpleasant. You're not staying with Mago? Yeah, I can't. Silene squeezed her eyes at me and laughed, but Shayla interrupted coldly, then you can go. Now? Shayla interrupted coldly, then you can go. Silene looked back at the empty hallway outside the door and wondered, where's the caretaker? I'll wait for her before I leave. Shayla took off the white coat she was wearing and put it on my bed, saying, tonight, I'm staying with the nurse. Silene and I looked at each other in four eyes and crackled. Electricity. I was so excited that I could hardly celebrate by setting off a string of firecrackers in place. That's great, I'll go right now. Silene said, reflexively feeling for the wazoo in her pocket again. Glancing at Shayla, she directly threw the cigarette into the trash can. Mago, you must follow the doctor's advice during this period of time, eat and sleep, and try to get your energy back as soon as possible. The second layer of meaning in Silene's words, I naturally understood. I secretly gave her an okay, and the understanding Silene immediately ran away. Leaving without any ambiguity at all, after Silene left, Shayla she actually did pull up a chair and sat down next to my bed. I licked my lips which were a bit dry again, and said nervously, Doctor, did you bring lip balm? My mouth is a little dry again. Shayla watched Silene leave. You like the girl type now really boy. Silene she actually, her boyfriend is having surgery and she won't even stay the night. No, she didn't. I looked at Shayla due to huffing and turning slightly red. She is not sitting next to me at the moment, eating someone else's jealousy? Shayla's eyes stared silently at my smiling face and suddenly raised her hand and rubbed my hair like a bird's nest. The tone of voice with a little annoyance, but extraordinarily moving, Mago, teasing your ex-girlfriend after a breakup, you also have no heart. I intercepted her hand and naturally patted it under my face. Rubbing it like a cat, I laughed, it's not certain who teased who. Shayla tries to withdraw her hand, and I outright frown and yell in pain. She froze in her movements and said in a hushed voice, Mago, I'm not a fish you keep. I don't have a fish pond either. I grabbed her hand and said, Silene she's brash and righteous, and she gets along with kilometers of coworkers. But she's really not my girlfriend. You know the type I like. It's always been a high cold distant sense imperial sister like you. Shayla, me, distant? Isn't there? When we used to be together, we only saw each other once a month. Shayla wrinkled her eyebrows. Mago, is that why you broke up with me? I was afraid that she would think wrongly, so I immediately explained, I didn't do it for that. I just simply wanted to see you, so I took the initiative every time, and you didn't seem to like me getting too close to you. Being with her always makes me feel like blasphemy. Shayla is the one I've been pursuing. We were together for a year before we pulled the trigger. After that, it was like she had a plan. She only saw me twice a month, no more, no less. I don't understand. Wouldn't two people in love prefer to see each other every day? I hate to tell the world that I have someone I like. But Shayla doesn't seem to be like that. My brother, who is in the same studio as me, analyzed it to me and said I can't do it. Me, I'm fine. That brother snickered. Just because you're called Mago doesn't necessarily mean you're good. People surgeons haven't seen any specimens, either you're not good as a person or you're not good. In any case, you cannot, otherwise why are you so cold? You two don't match. Other girls are kind and don't want to hurt your pride. Brother, really can't, just change one. I'm speechless. I'm really getting out of line. It's not like I'm a very horny man. I glanced at Shayla beside the hospital bed. I haven't seen her for so long, but she hasn't changed a bit. Under the incandescent light, she looks like a Venus in a studio with a white veil. I admit, even if I met her hundreds of times again, I would still be attracted to her. When you love someone, you can't help but want to possess her. When Shayla saw me staring at her, she suddenly took the initiative to bring her face closer to me. Do you miss me? I nodded honestly, I think it's useless, the knife wound recovery, at least 3 months. Shayla deliberately hooked the corner of the mouth, before strenuous exercise. The tone of her voice is intentionally aggravated on the strenuous exercise. I know she is still jealous of Silene. I pulled her sleeve. Silene only treats me as a brother. Shayla obviously doesn't believe me. You're not boyfriend and girlfriend, so why do you do sports together? I told her the truth. Her birthday party, her girlfriend insisted on playing truth or dare. She and I both lost and drew the dare, which made us both jump in calisthenics. Unexpectedly, jumped out of acute appendicitis. I know this paragraph, a bit too much information. Straight women don't digest it very well. I didn't expect Shayla's furrowed brow to gradually unfurl as she said, so, show some respect. I will go out for a while. After a while, Shayla returned to my side. Gently put down a thermometer into my mouth. The slender fingers brought a faint smell of antiseptic hand sanitizer as they brushed against the tip of my nose. Next time, don't hold back on anything. Call me directly. She suddenly said to me. I was stunned. Will you answer it? She looked at the slightly reddened ends of my eyes and said in a warm voice, I will. For a while, the ward was quiet. I was a little sleepy. I do not know how long I slept. When I woke up with the urge to urinate, it must have been still light. Shayla was sitting on the edge of my bed, reading a book by the dim incandescent light in the hospital room. Her eyes were already a little red, and I couldn't help but move my hand. Shayla raised her head, and it turned out that my hand had been gently held by her. She leaned over. How to wake up? I had to pee. Shouldn't have, you inserted that, Shayla said, bending over and wondering what she was getting at the side of my bed. It wasn't until I saw a bag cupped in her hand. I realized I had just come out of surgery with a catheter in my body. My face instantly burned. When I was with Shayla, I paid special attention to my privacy, fearing that I might make her feel uncomfortable. Even when we stayed in a hotel, Shayla was in the room and I was in the next toilet taking a dump. With all the faucets and showerheads on, I still didn't dare to make a strong effort for fear of popping out a fart. The image that I try to keep up nowadays, all collapsed today. Suddenly I regret so much that I let Shayla stay as a chaperone. I hold her wrist. Shayla, you do not touch the bag. Shayla really do not dare to continue, looked up and asked me, pain? No, my face was already red to the roots of my ears, and I didn't even dare to look at her. I spit out one word in a whisper, dirty. I'm a doctor, and you don't have to feel embarrassed, it's not like you haven't seen it before. Shayla said a operation, take it for me to clean it up. Looking at her busy back, my eyes read. It seems that since my parents divorced when I was 4 years old, no one has been so nice to me except my grandmother who brought me up. Shayla returned to my side and pulled down my arm over my forehead. What's wrong? Shayla was stunned when she saw my face, a big man suddenly crying so ugly. Hearing her say that, I was even more difficult. I have always wanted to give you a good impression, even at that time to turn off the lights. Shayla heard, angry and funny, your eyes, I'm so shallow? I said, you would often go to see my show at that time, and finally accepted my reason. Your best friend said it was because of my looks, which matched the ideal type in your mind. No, she was wrong, Shayla answered too quickly, and I lost my mood. The next moment, Shayla fed me a white rabbit milk candy in my open mouth. She pinched the candy paper, as if to say to herself, because we like it, we are together. Because of Shayla's words, I regained my confidence. The next day, my good buddy Josh came to visit me. While Shayla had 2 surgeries to attend to in the morning, I asked Silene to bring me a bouquet of roses and Shayla's past favorite cake. I changed into my own shirt and freshened myself up. Looking at myself in the mirror, I was slightly relieved. This looks much more refreshed. Drinking the soup I stewed, I guarantee you'll be 100 times more energetic. What kind of 10% tonic soup? I'll try it. I held the sugar water given by Silene and drank 3 bowls in a row. Just a short while after drinking it, I felt my intestines gurgling and writhing. Me, so powerful? Just after drinking it, I felt that there was a chi running around in my body. Silene laughed. I looked it up on the internet, aromatic orange radish water. The exhaust effect is especially good. It's most suitable for people like you who have just finished surgery and haven't drained. Before Silene finished her sentence, I let out a cannon-like fart. Silene laughed and let out a goose call. while laughing and clapping at the sea dog. Ha 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 ha. Good fart, one more. I'll treat you to a big meal when it empties. I popped out a few more as I tried. Then I see Shayla, who's been standing in the doorway of the hospital room for I don't know how long, and presumably, from her expression, should have been here for a while. I was on the verge of digging my toes into the bedpan when Shayla spoke first. The patient in bed 07 is ventilated and can be scheduled for a surgical meal today. With that, she left. As if nothing had happened. Silene reassured me, it's okay, man. Such a loud fart usually doesn't stink. Not to mention the doctor, she was wearing a mask. I stared lifelessly at the ceiling and said, please go to my tattoo parlor right now and ask my clerk to come over tonight to keep me company. I don't have the face to face Shayla anymore anyway. Silene gave an oh-so sigh, walked to the door and then turned back to me, and said, Mago, actually, I think that two people who love each other don't need to focus too much on all this. Otherwise, you will be very tired if you fall in love like this. I cannot listen to it. Silene also do not make fun of themselves. To my pillow under a set of big brand perfume, sent my sister-in-law. Flowers, cakes, old-fashioned. Next time, remember to send these girls like. Silene left. I picked up the phone to never take the initiative to contact my mom, sent a text message. I didn't expect that this time. My mom quickly called me back. I answered happily, and instead of waiting for her concern, it was a chastisement that split my face. Who said acute appendicitis to operate? First conservative treatment you will die ah? You're a big man, you can't even endure this pain? What's the use? Mom, acute appendicitis was really painful, and the doctor diagnosed it and determined that it couldn't be treated conservatively. You got a tattoo, and now you have a scar on your stomach. It's disgusting even if you don't mind. You're a model, how can you take on brands and make money like this? I put up with the pain of the cut last night, but after hearing those words, I suddenly feel pain all over. Don't I still have a store? I can, come on, how much money can you make with that shitty body store of yours, loser? Don't forget to call for your brother's tuition next month, or I'll shake you up for all the shit you've done in the past. The phone had hung up for a long time, but I kept answering it. Until someone took my cell phone and Shayla casually blacklisted the string of numbers at the top of the call log. Did your mom yell at you again? I braced my pride. No, she's just like that. She was a little anxious when she heard I was in the hospital and spoke harshly. Shayla looked at me, Mago. I tried to look calm and unconcerned. Ever since I was a kid, my mom demanded that I be strong. But because I looked like the father who knew what was going on, she hated me and scolded me for being so much like my father that I was destined to do nothing as well. But she forgot that I was also a victim in their marriage. Because my father made a mistake, I lost my old job restoring Chinese paintings. In order to make money and support the family, I gave up my favorite art major to become a model and a tattoo artist. I have never been so sentimental before. I don't know why, but after this surgery, I suddenly seem to understand a lot more. It's the price of growing up, and it hurts a little bit, says Shayla. Shayla said, I'm still in the hospital, what's with the shirt change? So careful about the image? I was quite sad, but when I heard Shayla's words, I couldn't help but laugh. The mermaid that I let go, I have to try to catch it back. When I looked up, I saw Shayla staring at me. She reached out her hand and gently brushed the broken hair covering my eyebrows. Mago, have you ever thought about it? Even if you don't use bait, I'll take the bait myself. I froze. Shayla laughed softly. Silly, let's eat lunch first. The odds are I'm back with Shayla. She personally fed me a bowl of wontons at lunch and asked me to play king with her. After I beat the opposite side to the blood, I let Shayla go up to harvest heads. After winning 3 in a row, both she and I were in a much more relaxed mood. Shayla, I remember you didn't like me playing King of Kings before. Me, who let you shout at your teammate's little brother every time you couldn't beat him? To me but so high and cold. Shayla snatched my cell phone and pushed me to the cushion. Little brother, skill is good. Remember to protect me next time too. Being shouted by Shayla as little brother, the corner of my mouth was almost like a K, I couldn't suppress it. She asked, satisfied? Satisfied. If you're satisfied, remember to take me to the king every season in the future. Shayla helped me with the quilt corner and said, have a good rest in the afternoon. I have 2 surgeries in the evening, I may be late, You don't have to come with me tonight. I interrupted her and said, I've asked my clerk to accompany me, so you can go straight home after work. Seeing Shayla's gradually lowering lips, I was busy explaining, it's not that I don't want you to come, but if you get tired because of me, my heart hurts. Shayla leaned her waist and moved closer to me. With a slight smile, she said, Mago, when you used to pester me all night and not let me sleep, why didn't you feel sorry for me? Before I could respond, Shayla walked away. Before she left, she even kissed me on the cheek. I couldn't understand Shayla more and more. She became proactive and then again it seemed like she didn't. For example, she just touched my cheek by accident, but my heart was beating like clockwork. In the afternoon the nurse reduced the saline by 2 vials, and I was finally able to get a good night's sleep, waking up to darkness and a tall figure sitting beside my bed. He was propped up on one hand and elbow on my bed, and under the staggered bangs, the circumference around the Zhongyang three-dimensional features. I frowned. How are you? Capote smiled. Silver lip ring through the bad, the front desk that Buddy does not come over. Then forget it. I am much better today, a person hospitalized is also fine. Capote not only did not go, but also took out a box of cake. Handed to my mouth, the boss is hospitalized, I have to mean to go again, right? I will eat by myself. Metro Line 5 last train seems to be 10:30? I don't know if it's because I'm overly concerned, but every time I'm with Capote, I feel uncomfortable and have goosebumps. I always feel that Capote is not normal, like a calcium. It's all because I'm usually busy with my main business and don't go to the store much. What kind of people did the apprentice recruit for me, brother? I drove here by myself. Capote said. Good. The ward fell into an awkward situation for a moment. I deliberately yawned. Strange, why sleepy again? Why are you in such a hurry to get rid of me? Capote leaned over, his magnetic voice low. I'm not a fucking viper. Or is it that brother has already discovered my secret? Capote, a pair of natural peach blossom eyes, at the moment soaked with laughter. What secret? I said lightly, you stole money from my store while I was away? This kid, from the first time I saw him, I think he looks like a dog. Sneaky. Capote pursed lips, half joking half serious, money is not important, want to steal people. I was disgusted, almost a fist smashed his face. Do not force me to beat you. Capote laughed, just kidding, I'm leaving, brother. Looking at his back as he left, I realized that the air in the ward was much clearer. But Capote hadn't even gotten out of the hospital room when he came face to face with Shayla. Capote had his hands in his pants pockets and a playful smile. Sorry, doctor. I was in a hurry and almost bumped into you. Shayla didn't even look at him, her usual high spirits. She ignored Capote and walked straight to me. Capote, self-conscious, walks away. Shayla looked at the cake on the bedside table, pondering, how come the greasy guy who just left looks a bit familiar, your friend? I scratched my head, it is my shopkeeper, newly recruited tattoo artist Xiao Qin. He heard that I was hospitalized and came over to sit for a while. You think he looks familiar? I don't think so, because he's only been in my store for 3 months, and you haven't even seen him before. Shayla looked at me and smiled lightly and said, you and I broke up these 3 months, but I feel like 3 years. Listening to what Shayla said, I was stunned. I really did not expect Shayla and her relationship with me so important. I held her hand. Doctor, I will definitely make it up to you in the future. After Shayla finished speaking, she left. I thought she was shy, but she went to the restroom and came back with a basin of hot water. She looked at me. Take off. Dense hot air spread into water mist. I lifted up a corner of my shirt. Sister. Are you sure, now? Shayla gave me a blank look. To help you, a cleanliness freak, clean. With gentle movements, she scrubbed me down and changed into clean clothes. The hot towel in her hand carefully avoids the incision and wipes the rest of my abdomen. When she reached my tattoos, Shayla was once again exasperated. No more tattoos, they destroy skin cells and are prone to infection. In fact, there are many ways to express love between lovers, there is no need to use this. I laughed. So what style do you like? Shayla was meticulously organizing my surgical gown and did not answer me. I was self-conscious. The corners of Shayla's mouth couldn't help but curve. She was unhurriedly buttoning up the last button for me. Suddenly she pressed down and kissed me without warning. This kiss, for a patient who has just finished surgery, is really a bit overwhelming. In no time at all, I couldn't help but wrap my arms around her waist. Shayla, however, came to a screeching halt and looked at me with a clear gaze. Dopamine. I listened and pulled her into my arms. That's a good way to go. Let's swap again? Shayla didn't spoil me, one more time and you're sweating. After that, she picked up the basin and left. I touched my reddened ear with the back of my hand, cursing myself for being an asshole and almost losing control. The flower of the mountain actually flirted with me in return? This is outrageous. Is Shayla enlightened, or I really can't do it? After that, out of a man's pride, I've been trying to get back in Shayla's good graces, but until the day I got out of the hospital, Shayla didn't give me a chance. I sat on the edge of the bed and watched Silene and Shayla help each other pack my bags one by one. It was a little exciting to finally be discharged from the hospital. Is there anything else I need to carry down, sister-in-law? Silene asked, panting and framing. Shayla used her chin to nod at the two large suitcases in the doorway. Silene finally realized that something was wrong. Why do I remember that there weren't so many things when Goo's brother was hospitalized? Shayla, these are all mine. Silene and I were both taken aback and said almost simultaneously, all your luggage? The trunk of my car was full, so I took up some of it and put it in the office. Yaya, can I trouble you to help carry them to your car? Shayla finished to Silene and looked at me again. I'm staying at Mago's starting tonight. Silene straightened her back and smiled very bad. Then Gulao, do you have to take it easy? I took Shayla's hand. You really want to move in with me? Shayla looked as usual, but her ears turned red. You need someone to take care of you after the operation, and I don't feel comfortable with you living alone. But sister, my house only has a double bed. Your house, I have been there, understand. I just wanted to talk a few more words. Silene, she dragged two suitcases and ran back. I go, brother-in-law. You bring your own pots and pans and rice cooker is not even a problem. Why do you bring a folding bed and quilt? I really don't understand either. Silene looked at the two big boxes, and wondered, what should we do? Should we call a car again? Shayla was about to pull out her cell phone when a voice came from the door. Brother, if you want to use the car, use mine. Capote, why is he here again? And as soon as he arrives he starts taking off his sweatshirt, a Balenciaga sweatshirt that brings up the bottoming shirt and lifts a corner, revealing firm, rippling abs. I immediately rushed up to cover Shayla's eyes. Who is this dude? Why is he so girly? Silene glared at Capote twice. Capote draped his sweatshirt over my shoulders and tied the sleeves in a knot. This angle of mine, I can just see the one at his waist and stomach. It was a cat-hugging teenager alongside the moon. The teenager had a melon face and very shallow dimples when he smiled. Without me opening my mouth first, Silene was already the first to shout, crap. Is that Mago on your belly as a baby? I raised my head and collided with Shayla's line of sight on the side. Her face didn't look good. How could it be? All I could think was outrageous. But Capote laughs, it is indeed Mago on my waist. His voice wasn't loud, and it killed quite a bit. Killing me as a party caught off guard. I can't help but curse, what's wrong with you? Capote smoothed out his rolled-up shirt and snorted, don't get me wrong, I just think that tattoo design on my brother's abdomen is beautiful. So I copied that picture of his and designed one that's almost the same. He tattooed because of love, I am purely occupational disease committed. This explanation, everyone obviously misunderstanding deeper. Shayla pulled off the sweater Capote had draped over me and tossed it aside. I was just about to go up and argue with Capote when Shayla pulled me away. She took me by the arm and walked down the road without saying a word, until I got into Shayla's passenger seat and we were the only two left in the car. I finally couldn't help myself. Shayla, why don't you say anything? Don't get me wrong, I'm as straight as can be. Shayla asked me, who did you get your tattoo from? I hurriedly explained, of course it's me. Small belly, not ass, I can operate by myself. Shayla was silent, and then asked, how long did it take to get the tattoo? 2 months. Shayla listened to this, her expression was grave, and her eyes grew deeper. The car slowly drove out of the parking lot. Shayla stared at the red and white parking meter pole in front of her, frowned and said, his one doesn't look new. You mean he was actually before me? Well, and that piece of skin has a lot of old and new scars from washing. That means he's changed that piece at least more than 5 times. What? I breathed a sigh of relief. It seems Capote he really does have an occupational disease. I can't believe he treats his work so strictly. You really can't be too straight. Shayla was exasperated, forget it, you have a girlfriend anyway. As soon as I got home, I realized all kinds of happiness brought by Shayla's saying that you have a girlfriend anyway. I don't know how to cook, and I don't even have a decent pot at home. When Shayla came, we had a pot and hot food. The 3 meals a day that I didn't get from my parents when I was a kid, I made up for with Shayla. After dinner I tried to wash my hair, but Shayla did it for me. I'm an appendectomy, not a paraplegic. You've been paralyzed in my eyes for a long time. Shayla moved a chair and put it in the bathroom. I sat on the chair and read the new invitations from the company group. Accidentally popped up a couple of girls' die cards. Despite having returned at the speed of light, it was still discovered by Shayla. I hastened to explain, I wasn't looking at them. Mago, look up. There was a sudden airy sound from above my head. I looked up and saw Shayla purposely sweeping her black hair over one shoulder, revealing a perfectly defined neckline and collarbone. I closed my mouth and swallow. Still looking, sis, I really didn't look. Tim had also operated on her now husband. She's always treated Shayla, her savior, more politely. Probably didn't realize that Shayla would get back together with me. My mom stood still for a moment without saying anything. Auntie, is this the son of you and Uncle Shen? Shayla took off her high-heeled shoes without expression and then took off the watch on her wrist. Put them one by one on the entrance cabinet. Yes. Dr. Jiang, I'm sorry. Kai, he's young, he loves to joke with his brother. Don't mind if I do. Auntie didn't know you were there, or else she would have brought you some fruits. Before my mom could finish her sentence, Shin Kai's shout came from the hallway. I've never seen Shayla like this before. I remembered her as always calm and collected, with a sense of moderation in her likes and dislikes. Even a great beauty with a bit of bookishness. But now she is cutting Shin Kai's arm in reverse and slapping the bottom of the slipper in her hand on his back one after another. When my mom reacted and went to pull the fight, Shin Kai was already crying out for help. Shayla wiped her hand, which was stained with Shin Kai's nosebleed, on his clothes in disgust. Auntie, if you're too busy during the week, I don't mind educating little Kai's brother for you. Shayla looked at my mom, her mouth smiling warmly and appropriately. She looked at my mom with a gentle smile on her lips, and for a moment, no one could find anything wrong with her. My mom is a typical woman. She was obviously frightened by the way Shayla beat up Shin Kai. She didn't say anything, hurriedly picked up Shin Kai on the ground and left. Shayla found out the medical kit to help me do emergency bleeding treatment, then looked at the time. The bleeding has been stopped for the time being, also I will drive you to the hospital. I apologized to her, I am sorry. Obviously the whole thing was not her fault, but her hands were shaking when she started the car. Trying to regulate the atmosphere, hands don't even shake when you're holding a scalpel. Mago, next time your brother picks a fight, you just do it. It's okay if you break his leg. I'll put it back on for him. So your hands are shaking because you're still angry about this? Not angry, I'm afraid you'll die someday. She gave me a sideways look. Stupid death. Do you realize how many cc's of blood you just lost? I didn't have as much as Shayla said. My incision chipped and I was wheeled back into the operating room, blood soaked through both of my gowns as Shayla restitched me. This time I was wide awake and watched Shayla the whole time. She was much more somber than the first time. Not talking, wearing a mask, Shayla's eyes reddened several times because of this too small to be true surgery. After I returned to the hospital room, it wasn't long before Shayla came in as well. She peeled a candy and put it in my mouth. The sweet flavor of the milk candy spread in my mouth and my whole body relaxed a little. White rabbit milk candy again. When Shayla spoke, her voice was muffled. Because she likes it. Why do you like it? When I was young, my parents didn't allow me to eat snacks, so throughout my childhood, I only remembered its flavor. Shayla lowered her head, carefully folding the candy paper. Finally, she put a paper star into my palm. I looked at the familiar star, and my heart contracted violently. When I looked up again, my vision was somewhat molded. Shayla gently held my hand and smiled at me. You finally remember, don't you? Yes, I remembered everything. I have never forgotten that memory, but I never thought that the tall and perfect Shayla would be the white, chubby, short-haired neighbor sister in my memory. When I was young, I moved in with my grandmother after my parents divorced. Grandma lived alone and usually worked odd jobs. I spent most of my childhood in a free-range state. Next door to Grandma's house, there was a young lady. Her situation was the opposite of mine. Except for going to and from school, I hardly ever saw her leave the house. The doors and windows were always closed, and the floor mats and stairs in front of the door were immaculately scrubbed. Even my sister's school uniform was neat and clean. My clothes were only changed and washed once every 2 or 3 days, and even when they were washed, Grandma only used well water to wash them once. Unlike her, Her clothes always smelled fresh. I loved to follow her around and walk her to school. One day, her classmates gathered around me to sing Little Dirt. I couldn't hold back and looked at Missy's snow-white school uniform and dropped a few tears. I didn't expect her to take off her school jacket on the spot and knead it into a ball and hand it to me. She said, "You can try it on if you like." I said, "No, what I like is the flavor on your school uniform." She froze and hid half a packet of washing powder for me the next day. That night, I heard her mom sternly educating her. It wasn't the first or second time that Missy's mom often got mad at her in the middle of the night. Obviously her grades were good enough. Grandma said that the neighbor's sister was quite miserable. Her parents were teachers at a famous local school. Her parents are teachers at a famous local school and are very strict with their children. Grandma told me not to go to this sister in the future. Her family situation is different from my family. I go to her is to add trouble to her. I listened to my grandmother and stopped following her around. Instead, I threw a white rabbit milk candy into the patio of my sister's house in the middle of the night every day. 3 months later, I received a glass jar full of paper stars. They were folded by Missy from the sugar paper of the white rabbit milk candy. I loved it. My sister sat next to me, stared at my chestnut-colored hair, and asked, "How did you dye your hair at such a young age?" I told her, "My mom took me to a contest and I was chosen. I'm a model now." Miss frowned, "What's a model?" I gave her 3 more milk candies and smiled proudly. "Actually, I don't really understand. My mom said that being a model you can have candy every day. And get money too." I pulled her behind a big tree and showed her the instant noodles I bought with the money I earned from modeling. In the late afternoon, the two of us hid in the bushes and shared a bag. There was no boiling water, so we chewed dry. My little sister actually ate more flavorfully than I did, and I couldn't resist wiping the seasoning powder from the corners of her mouth and laughing at her. "Why do you look like you haven't eaten in 100 years? She dropped her shoulders. "My mom won't let me eat these things." I froze. My small hand stopped on the back of her hand, where a few ruler marks remained. The little sister laughed a little. "It's okay, I'm used to it. Brother, I really envy you. You can be free every day." This seems to be the first time she showed a smile in front of people. Looking at her smiling face, but I reddened my eyes. Sister envies me for my freedom. I envy her family of 3. If I have a choice, I actually don't want this kind of freedom. That day, we made a wish together on a sugar paper star, and then buried it under a tree together. In order to find it later, my sister even made a small flag with an instant noodle bag. Only, without waiting for us to return the wish, my sister's family moved away. Back then, as soon as you saw me, you called out Miss Sister. Shayla thought of the past, and finally eased her emotions. Her brows and eyes were permeated with tenderness. In fact, is it possible, it's because you never told me your name? Shayla immediately said, "It's you who didn't ask me. So, how did you find out I was dirt?" Shayla flipped a postcard out of her wallet. The ink on it was already a little dull, but the little boy's smile was still as bright as the sun. Printed in the corner was my stage name, Sugar Bunny, from when I was a child model. Because I was so pretty as a child, my mom used to make me wear a wig and pose as a girl for commercials. I didn't realize that I would be treasured by Shayla, but suddenly I didn't hate myself so much. "When I grew up, I never forgot you." Shayla's thumb rubbed the corner of the Ming letter, and there was light in the bottom of her eyes. She said, "In the age of the internet, it's not hard to find someone. One night through your stage name as a child, I found you online. Learned that your real name is Mago, a plain model of a company." Hearing Shayla's words, I lowered my head. "Then you should also know about the unpleasant rumors about me on the internet." Shayla hummed. My heart followed and sank. Then I heard her say, "But rumors stop at the wise man. Mago, I'm not loving you with my ears. And over the years, you've been a voice for women as a male. Many of the public service activities you have been involved in have required a great deal of courage, and I admire you for that." I looked up at her gentle smiling face. Shayla reached out and gently traced my brow with her finger and smiled, not with her eyes either. That night, we talked a lot. Shayla fell asleep against my chest. Holding her, I slept very peacefully. In the middle of the night, Shayla received a phone call. I was in a sleepy daze when she kissed the corner of my lips and walked out of the hospital room. I thought it was an emergency in the hospital for her, and when I still hadn't seen her until noon the next day, I couldn't help but make a few calls, but she didn't answer any of them. I had a vague feeling that something might have happened, and I was anxious. The nurse who came over to help me change the saline bottle looked at me with a look of desire to speak. After hesitating, she returned to me, "Are you Dr. Kang's boyfriend?" Yes. Dr. Kang, she had an accident. I clicked on the link that the little nurse sent me. It was a video of a female surgeon in a tertiary hospital going crazy and beating people up. The video was put up on the internet in the middle of the night yesterday, and by this morning, it had attracted the attention of many people in the community. This video has no beginning and no end. The first thing that comes up is that Shayla is holding down Sinkai on the ground and beating him. The angle of the video was very tricky, just enough to capture Shayla's face clearly. When the final shot flashed past my front door, the image was specially processed. My face and door number were mosaic. It was obvious that the video was specifically targeting Shayla. But it must not have been made by my mom or Shinkai. Because my mom is not very educated. The little nurse also told me that this youth who was beaten in the video was stabbed several times, and was brought in by ambulance at 4 a.m. and has been in resuscitation. That's when I realized the seriousness of the matter. Shayla became the biggest suspect and was taken away on the spot by the police in front of one of the neighborhoods where the incident took place. Deadly staring at my cell phone, my temples bursting with pain. After watching the video a few more times, I suddenly realized a problem. If someone is squatting with a cell phone to shoot, obviously it is impossible. Because the hallway of our house was clean, there were no piles of debris that could be used to hide from people. The video, if it wasn't shot by a person, could only be a video camera. Still not easily detectable, extremely tiny. Thinking of this, my back inexplicably rose with a chill. I picked up my cell phone and was just about to dial Sileni's number. Just as suddenly, Timmy called me and told me to come to the hospital. "Buddy, are you okay?" Sileni looked at the half-played video in the background of my cell phone and frowned. "This is something you already know? Shayla sent you here to keep an eye on me?" "I'm sorry, I have to go out now at Chikoshi." I got out of the hospital bed, grabbed my jacket and headed out. In the hospital's dimly lit underground garage, I walked quickly through a car with my still vaguely swollen cut on hold. The footprints looked like they had traveled around this car so many times that I couldn't help but feel a bad feeling welling up in my heart. Snapped behind me a sound of a can being stepped on. I saw a tall reflection through the car window. A step, mouth and nose suddenly pungent gas soon, the whole person was paralyzed nerves. Capote stood behind me, unhurriedly lit a cigarette, deep inhalation, and slowly exhaled. He looked at me, and behind the patch of smoke, a smile appeared. "Brother, where is this going?" "I'll drive you." I hadn't gone more than a few meters before he caught me. He patted the back of my neck like a finger-catching hawk, his cold fingers in my carotid artery like a warning that he could snap my neck with one hand if he wanted to. At that moment, a private car drove up front and I was just about to call for help. He then stuck up and whispered in my ear, "Shoo, if you want to save Dr. Kong, you'll have to do as you're told." I clenched my fists and watched as the private car passed us. Capote tugged on my arm in satisfaction. "Let's go, brother." Capote buckled my seatbelt and coaxed me like a child. "What's wrong?" "Don't look like that, I feel guilty." "Did you post that video online?" "Well, Dr. Jiang vs. Evil Woman," the response was average. I changed the title to give her a boost, and Capote talked and laughed as if nothing had happened, while I listened to him as if I were on ice. "She got off too lightly, though. A scum like your brother deserves to die." Capote's eyes darkened, and he pressed the cigarette in his hand out. "Who let him keep bothering you? So it was you who stabbed Shinkai? Otherwise?" Capote let out a snort. "You're Dr. Jiang, a woman. Only saving people with a pocket knife. After hurting someone and framing Shayla, the people who put a camera outside my door were all Capote. So what was his purpose? Surveillance or voyeurism? If it's surveillance, then I'm thinking right. There should be a camera in the bedroom too, otherwise Capote couldn't have known about me. Because I had done that design on my computer at home, there was no way anyone else in the store could have seen it except for me. I asked Capote, "Where are you taking me?" He smiled. "Nothing much, just been wanting to invite you to sit at home. I don't know if Buddy can do me the honor today?" 40 minutes later, the car was parked in a private garage. Capote's home is a detached villa, even with a pool garden. This is completely different from what he said when he first applied for a job at my store. Maybe he's been disguising himself since then, but what was the purpose of his approaching me? I was sure I had never seen Capote before. "Eeyore, welcome to my home." Capote shoved me out of the car, his hand attempting to come for my wrist. I refused in disgust. He smiled without minding and took my hand forcefully. That's how you got out of my face that day. She took you by the arm and you didn't look back. Brother, do you know how I felt at that time? Capote dragged me, step by step, towards his home. He took me to a bedroom without a balcony and pulled up again. All the light in the room was cut off. Capote stood in the shadows and poured me a glass of water. Brother, I'll show you something interesting. He sat down next to me and turned on the projector. A slideshow began to play on the white wall. Picture after picture of me as a model came into view, as a child and now. It kept scrolling alternately. Capote sank into it, his eyes transfixed. Happy 10th anniversary. He presses pause, and on the wall is a photo I recently posted to my friends. It was originally a picture of Shayla and I together, but now Shayla has been keyed out and replaced with him. He pointed to this composite intimate photo and smiled at me. I've been worshipping my brother for a whole decade. An avid fan of yours, so to speak. Your magazines you endorsed, I buy them every time. I've spent almost $1 million on you. But what about that doctor? What has she ever done for you? Has she liked you as long as I've liked you? Capote leaned in, the silver lip ring on his lips glowing with an icy sheen. A punch smashed blood from the corner of his mouth, and instead of anger he licked the oozing with enjoyment. The next second he pulled out a pair of handcuffs and sneaked up on me, handcuffing me to the bed frame. Capote reached into my pants pocket and took my phone. You were recording? Capote sank down, turned it off and threw it straight into the fishbowl. He looked at me somberly. Want to call the police? Obviously you did the deed. Why frame Shayla? You should fucking go to the squatting bureau. You say why? He pressed closer to me and lifted his shirt. I looked at the dense tattoos on his body and just felt creeped out. Capote, he was really crazy. He had my likeness tattooed all over his back, and it turned out that the piece that was accidentally exposed that day was just the tip of the iceberg. Capote yelled at me, learn that you want to open a store. I'll go outside and learn now. I've been by your side every day, all the way to this day. Why can't you just notice me? Male fans don't fucking deserve attention? Male fans are perverts and deserve to die? Like suppressing it for too long and suddenly losing control. Capote turned on the machine next to the bed and stared dead in the face of my stomach with red eyes. He cried and laughed and turned around to look for tools. Mago, can you tattoo a portrait of me on your body, even if it's just my name? Okay, if you have the guts, let me go. I sneer, I promise I'll tattoo shit on you. As long as you tattoo it, I'll love it. Capote, the pervert, laughed as he turned on the tattoo needle and walked towards me. Just then, the bedroom door was suddenly slammed open, and outside the door rushed in countless civilian police. Shayla was there, and she was the first to give Capote a kick in the crotch. Capote was kicked off guard and his whole body fell on the glass coffee table aside. His face was pale, but he stared at Shayla and still squeezed out a smile. Why don't you stay at the police station? Why do you have time to run here? Capote. Shayla looked at him with cold eyes and said, no, I should call you Qin Xiaoyan, the group leader of Mago's fan support group. Shayla looked at the room full of photos and support items, disgusted. These years you posed as a female fan while mixing into Mago's rice circle as the group leader female, stealing his daily photos. At the same time, you also opened countless small numbers to pee those life photos into intimate pictures, pretending that you are in a relationship. Look posted on social software. After Shayla's words, I looked at Capote incredulously. You are the Yen sister in the group? Capote laughed. Mago fan group has so many fans, what makes you suspect me? Shayla coldly said, because I am also in the group. Capote and I froze at the same time. Shayla, she's actually a fan of mine too? The corners of my mouth rose imperceptibly. Shayla glared at me, her face flushed a little. Mago, he's simple and likes to share his life in the group. I want to make sure there are no perverts like you in the group who dive in and do bad things while posing as fans. And female fans who took the opportunity to tease him. In the end, the police collected evidence at Capote's home and also found the tools of the trade for seriously injuring Sinkai in the bathroom. After Capote was taken away by the police, Shayla accompanied me back to the car, and I pulled her into my arms just as she sat down. A police officer came over and knocked on the car window. Dr. Jiang, this time we were able to successfully capture the culprit thanks to the clues you provided. The untrue public opinion about you on the internet, our police will step in to help you clarify and remove it. Please. After the police left, Shayla told me, the original a few years ago on the internet constantly appear about my private life chaotic, men and women eat all the time and other countless gossip is someone deliberately, Shayla she has been tracking these things. She found out that someone had used a lot of small numbers to fake the daily life of my relationship and posted it on the internet. Judging from those relatively close-to-life photos, it's very likely that this person is a hardcore fan of mine. Judging from those relatively close-to-life photos, it's very likely that this person is a hardcore fan of mine. But Shayla still recognized Capote as soon as she saw him in the ward that day. Capote's lip ring and Qin Xiaoyan's lip ring had the same position and the same style, not only that the structure of their lip shapes and mannequins were also very close. Hearing this, I can't help but feel that Shayla is worthy of studying medicine. The details are so on point. So, that day at the hospital when you said Capote was a familiar face, you actually realized something was wrong with him? No, it was only when I saw that suspicious tattoo on his waist later that I was really sure. Shayla took my hand and said, yesterday, after I received a strange phone call in the middle of the night, I reported it to the police in advance. In order not to scare the snakes, I had to pretend to be hooked first, but I was worried that you were alone in the hospital, so I called Silene. I didn't expect this to happen in the end. Speaking of which, the ends of Shayla's eyes colored slightly red. I took out a candy from my pocket and fed it into her mouth. Sister, you've done enough for me. Nothing in return, please eat the candy. She was slightly stunned, then she circled my neck and kissed me wrapped in sugar milk candy flavored kisses, very sweet. Today's events and the troubles that have plagued me for many years finally passed together. On the way home, I leaned against the car window and looked at Shayla, who was driving the car. Her serious look is really pretty. The internet says that a man's best dowry is his relationship brain. I think so. I like Shayla, no reason, no time limit. Shayla, are you sure you don't want to go back to the hospital? I look at her, I just want to sleep in Dr. Kang's arms right now. Shayla, I'm sure I don't want to go back to the hospital. Then let's go home. It would be nice to hear you say the name of the vest that you used in my fan group, Dry Agent, all those years ago. Shayla goes silent. In reply to Do Drinker I missed a beat and laughed so hard my cuts hurt. Shayla frowned. What are you laughing at? You want to get stabbed again? No, it turns out that the soft girl who always sends cute cat emoticons is actually you. Shayla said, Capote, this group owner when very cautious, want to mix into you. That group is not easy. It's not easy to get into your group, because your female fans are mostly young girls who are not yet experienced in the world. So, you're just trying to get by? Does it count? Shayla's mouth lifted at the sound of my laughter. As she switched gears, she took my hand in hers. Mamago. She said, when you get better, I'll take you to meet two people. I was still laughing at that screen name of hers when I suddenly heard her say that and instantly froze. Shayla frowned nervously. What's wrong? When I don't know what to say. Thinking of Shayla's family, education, a time of low self-esteem and expectation of various emotions mixed together. You don't want to see my parents? No, in my dreams. I suddenly thought of Shayla's mom is very strict, worried, aunt and uncle will like me like this? Wouldn't you know if you met them? Anyway, my mom, she has long wanted to see you. After I heard that, I directly froze. It turned out that I was not Shayla's secret. Her parents and friends know about me. Shayla said her mom was empty and wanted to meet me, but I didn't realize my aunt was so empty. The next morning, I met Shayla's mom in her own living room. A slightly chubby middle-aged woman with small curly hair from time to time and wearing a floral dress. Me. What happened to the famous schoolteacher with the cool and haughty demeanor? I was worried about my own dyed hair and jewelry cannot enter the eyes of the aunt. The result, the aunt saw me, on the boast. You, this hair color is so white. You wear this necklace brand I also like. Look, Saturn with diamonds. I don't understand. When I was a child, I remember Shayla's mom was dignified and always wore a turquoise or white knee-length dress. Neighbors greeted her, and she was aloof and just nodded. But this auntie in front of me, single person can say a drama, and laughter still crunchy crisp. I was circling when auntie suddenly put a large gold Buddha on my neck. I heard that you were hospitalized. Auntie specially went to the gold store to buy it. Men wear gold, it's good for your health. Oh, right. And these. In no time, the coffee table was piled up with Kala coriacini, ginseng, bird's nest and other supplements. Finally, Auntie took out a big bag of white rabbit milk candy from her bag. Sugar baby, Auntie knows that you and Timothy are in love because of this. So, Auntie came over today and specially bought a bag for you. Candy? Yes, that's what Timmy called you in his diary. Shayla's mom thought for a moment, took my arm and laughed. If you don't like it, I'll call you handsome? Dude. After a handsome, Shayla's mom directly and I talked about gossip. She talked from Shayla's childhood allergies to Shayla's adolescent crush diary, and from the diary's sugar babies to Shayla and I's wedding date. Wait a minute? Looking at Shayla, who sat across from us and pursed her lips and smiled all the time, my head almost exploded. For the next period of time, Shayla's mom came to my house every now and then to see me. Every time she came, she would stop by to help me clean up a bit and cook a big meal. One day, I finally couldn't help but ask Shayla, what was the reason for the change in Auntie's temperament? She became so cheerful and lively. My mom was always like that, and you know she was the one who taught my dad and me a lesson when we were little. And my mom's modesty was purely a disguise. After my grandma left, her nature came back. Shayla took me into her arms and said, in short, she didn't live with her in-laws after marriage and beat up her husband every day. It turns out that your character follows your aunt. I heard, laughed, then I have to learn from my father-in-law, how to let his wife beat comfortably after marriage. Nonsense what? Shayla in my waist twisted a bit, you want to marry you 10 months later, Shayla and I got married. I did my best to give Shayla a decent wedding. On the day of the wedding, my mother pushed her disabled brother to touch the porcelain, and was pointed at by my mother-in-law, a bilingual mixed scolding. My mom was uneducated and didn't even have a chance to talk back. Just to pat her thighs and sit on the ground and cry, she was picked up by my 1'9", tendon-fleshed father-in-law and thrown out with one hand. Old father-in-law patted me on the back, said, son-in-law, after marriage, eat strong point, nothing more jerk iron. Do you still have protein powder at home? No, my father has some at home. In the future, the two of us will be able to protect our daughters-in-law. I asked Shayla, did our dad used to teach physical education? I put the ring on my ring finger. The ring was put on my ring finger, and he laughed and said, no, he taught music. I couldn't hold it back and broke my voice. I couldn't hold back the laughter and broke my voice. My mother-in-law came to my rescue when I was so embarrassed. She excitedly held the microphone and shouted at me that my son was the most handsome. Even with a broken voice, looking at Shayla's family cheering and applauding for me, as well as the smiling guests on the stage, my eyes got hot, and a big man shed a tear. I unveiled the white veil in front of Shayla and leaned down to kiss her. As we embraced each other, she leaned over my shoulder and said softly, do you remember the wish you made to the sugar paper stars when you were a child? It came true today. I looked at her and smiled, mine too. Since then, I have a home, but also have her. We both have a lifetime of endless sugar.